Welcome to another episode of the Village Project, where we talk about how raising successful children takes a strong community. We are your hosts, Michael Hodges, the community father, and Nicole Reed, an educator in the Antelope Valley. As mentioned in a previous episode, Mr. Hodges and I have taught together for about 20 plus years. And during that time, we've cultivated a friendship through different schools, families, students, and friends that we share. It's my privilege to introduce to you the host of the Village Project and community father, Michael Hodges.
Hello, everyone.
But before we hear from Michael, we would like to briefly discuss the three pillars we believe to be the foundation of the Village Project. So, as mentioned, we will start out with pillar number one. Pillar number one is a solution-oriented mindset. And in that solution-oriented mindset, we reframe problems as challenges. We take responsibilities for the problems in our community. We ask the right questions. We maintain a positive attitude, and we commit to continuous learning. Michael, what do you want to add to that?
I think that each one of those five things that you mentioned are so profound and so vital to the importance of a solution-oriented mindset because it's so easy to get caught going down that negative rabbit hole whenever a problem is brought up. And I usually have to stop myself and think, I'm supposed to be talking about solutions. And so I think that's a good reason to have this as one of the pillars. It kind of keeps us on that track of what we're doing here, which is to improve. And the commitment to continuous learning too is also a very important thing. And I think it's like a mindset that you almost train yourself that no matter what you're looking at or who you're talking to, you start to realize there's something to be learned here. And I think that just adds for a richer life when you have that attitude.
Most definitely. And then pillar number two is all about that community that we want to build. And so part of that is building and creating effective habits. And so some of that is being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, putting first things first, and synergize. What do you think about some of those effective habits that I just mentioned?
I think it's important to community, especially to a successful community. I believe that in the AV we have everything we need right here, and which doesn't mean that we'll never get help from outside, but we just need to learn to trust each other and to lean on each other. And sharing habits is one of those ways that we can do that because some of us know things that other people don't, and vice versa. And when we share with each other and commit to rolling up our sleeves and going to work, I just think it makes for a better community.
Yes. And then the last pillar that we have is effective mentoring. Effective mentoring, just embrace just embrace this with one another. We want to walk with it and don't talk at each other. We want to create a space that is non-judgmental. We don't want to have people coming in with an ignorant mindset. We want to make sure that we are just a safe space and then affirm their process. We want to make sure that we help mentees' growth. And we see them as somebody who can go out and just really take what they've learned and apply it.
Yeah. Yes. I believe that it's leading parents, lifting youth, and lighting the way. And I actually read a scripture this morning, and it had to do with Jesus calling Lazarus out from the tomb. And and I never heard it said like this before, but think about the people who had to approach this man that was wrapped in these bandages that I'm pretty sure had that smell, but yet they realized the only way we can help him is to endure what we got to do to help him get free. And I kind of feel like that's what mentoring is like because you never know what you're going to encounter. You're going to encounter people that have been through trauma, people that just really have, bad attitudes and are bitter. But how are you going to let that affect you as you try to help them? Are you willing to get down and dirty and sometimes deal with the bandages that have a scent to it? Are you willing to do that? And to me, that's what effective mentoring is.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That gives a lot of perspective on different things. So I'm super excited to jump in to hear all about you and to hear about how you, as a father, as an educator, as a husband, have kind of navigated through these various topics that we've been talking about on the Village Project. So let's jump in with you and your younger years. So let's share a little bit about your life.
Wait a minute, Nicole. Are you saying that I'm the guest speaker for the day?
Yes, you didn't know that? You are our
Oh,
guest
I was
speaker.
wondering why there wasn't a third picture on the screen. So
No, no, it's all you today, my friend. All
oh,
you.
okay. All right. So you want to hear about my young life, huh?
I
Okay.
do. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm I'm born a second child of 10 children. And so just the fact that I had 10 brothers and sisters, that just let you know that there really wasn't ever a dull moment growing up, you know. And the positive thing about that was, even though it wasn't perfect, there was I don't ever really remember being lonely. There was just always someone around, and because of that, since I've gotten older, I've really learned to value my alone time, you know. And so I'll tell you a little bit about my mother and father. My mother was she was incarcerated shortly before I was born. And if you ever, she has a couple of books out, and she gives her testimony a lot, and you'll hear the gory kind of details of that. I'll just say she was incarcerated, but while she was incarcerated, someone came in and told her about Christ, causing her to give her life to Christ and become saved. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because that really kind of influenced my young life. Because as far back as I can remember, um, I was I was in church, 2 to 3 times a week, and my mother had a habit of pulling all of us in, all the children, and teaching us Bible lessons on basically every night. I don't think we did it on the weekend, but Monday through Friday, it was just a part of the schedule. We all come and sit at her feet while she was at the couch. She had a flannel board, and she would put those felt pictures on there. And we really learned how everything. We learned all the Bible stories, but we also learned how to read because she would have us read scriptures and take turn reading scriptures. So we were being educated and not even really knowing what was happening. So when we got to school, we could understand why some of the children didn't know how to read because we had been doing all that all of our young life. So my mom, I don't know if she did it on purpose, but without, she kind of taught us about the Lord, but taught us how to read all in the same time. Yeah. And my father, they both met on the streets. So, and he was a kind of a gangster. He kind of, I think he hung with a group called the Rolling Sixties in South Central LA and East LA. And but because my mom started having lots of children, I could tell that he started to try to turn his life around and change. He didn't hang out with his friends as much as he did early on. And he realized he needed to do something to take care of the big family that was growing. And so he changed, but he really influenced me in a way that he was never really into sports, unlike most men. But he pushed education and he pushed the arts. I remember him buying an old piano and messing around on the piano, doing his best to learn. But he so I ended up playing the trombone early on. And I remember there was a time where I wanted to quit because kids would make fun of me. They see me carrying this long case and they'd say, "There goes Michael with his coffin." And so every kid wants to fit in and they don't want to be made fun of. So I wanted to quit because I was like, they're making fun of me with this thing. But he kind of told me that that wasn't going to happen. We're going to continue to do that. And because of that, um, I, I, that led to me being in the Pasadena High School band, which really caused my life to take off in a different trajectory. Yeah.
Can I share a couple pictures of
Sure.
you and
Yes.
your days? Okay, let me
Yes.
see if I can get this going for you guys.
Okay.
Let's
That's my mom. She just had
okay.
she just we just celebrated her 80th birthday on Sunday.
Oh, happy birthday, Mom. Look at that.
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can share another one with you.
Yes, that's my days in the Pasadena High School band. And I just want to say really quickly that first of all, I'm part of the trombone section, and we still meet to this day. And there's about 7 or 8 of us, and we still come together and hang out. And I always feel refreshed when I hang out with them. But that guy on my left, Brian Duffy, was a he was a junior when I was a freshman, and he took me under his wings, and he kind of made sure I had everything that I needed to have. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to stay in the band because my parents weren't going to spend a lot of money because they didn't have a lot of money. But he made sure I had everything that I needed, and so he was really like one of the first male mentors in my life outside of my father that really helped my life to go in a positive direction. And so for that, I'm just forever grateful to Brian Duffy for that.
And do you guys still meet? The two, is he still part of your seven that meet?
Yes, he is. He is, and what a great guy, And here's something else special about Brian. He didn't have a father that was living with him. I'm not sure what the situation was. I just remember it was him and his younger brother. So he had a younger brother that was about my age that he was fathering,
Hmm.
on his own. And for him to kind of reach out and help me, you know, despite the things, him lacking in certain areas, just really made that even much more special. So thank you, Brian Duffy. And I hope you watch this, you know,
So what I hear from that is it doesn't necessarily take a mentor, doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that's extremely older than you. It can be somebody that's just a couple years older than you that just comes alongside you and supports you.
definitely, definitely. Yes, well said. So do you want me to continue?
Yeah, why don't you continue? I just wanted to share a little bit of pictures with some of those things that you were saying. So thank you for letting me do
Okay. Do you have a picture of my father there?
that. I did not see one of Dad. No.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it while you're talking.
Okay. So, like I said, he didn't encourage sports. He kind of pushed education, and he didn't graduate from high school. So, but he did kind of educate himself. I remember him taking courses through correspondence, through mail. He would take courses that way, and he would always come and tell us when he got an A. He was always like acing the tests, and he learned electronics. He learned how to fix TVs, and then eventually he ended up landing a job with LA County as a computer operator. And so because of that, we kind of moved into the middle class, where before we were kind of below in the middle class. And so, but because of his efforts and his self education, we were able to improve our quality of life. Yes.
So with all of that, Dad was able to kind of take an idea of, hey, what I'm doing right now is not beneficial for my family. And so I'm going to better my family by teaching myself, showing my kids that education is important and moving you guys in the right direction as a family.
Yes. Yeah.
How long did you kind of see that going on with your dad?
basically my whole young life because he was there the whole time, and that really played a critical part in the way that I kind of was with my children. I wanted to maintain that at least being there. I wasn't really taught about quality of time, but I did understand the importance of me being there and being in the home to the best of
Just
my
being,
ability.
just being present and making sure that you were present.
Yes. And he would have me and my brother go out and cut the grass and rake the leaves. And so I kind of learned good work ethics. And so he just really did have a profound effect on my life.
So before we go into how you were parented or how you were parented, explain a little bit about how the band, Pasadena High School Band, kind of played a major role in determining that trajectory of your life, other than the guys that were there mentoring. What else contributed to that?
Well, they had a huge sign hanging up on the wall, and it said, "The standard is perfection." And that is imprinted in everybody who was in the band during the time that I was there. That's imprinted in their mind. Everybody talks about that sign. The standard is perfection. And we tried to the best of our ability to carry that out whenever we were out on the field or whenever we were in praise. We knew that precision and all of that played a big part. But I think the key thing was discipline. And I remember when we used to get on the bus to go to and from events, for the first 3 minutes, we would always sit in silent bus. And that's where we all sat up straight, like we were at attention, eyes forward, and we stayed silent until they called it off. But that it just was a constant reminder to each and every member of the band that we're disciplined. We're different from other groups. And because of that, we won a lot of awards. And so and then just the whole it just opened up my worldview. It was really one of the first schools that I went to where there was a good mixture. Pasadena had a system of busing white kids from the white areas into the black neighborhoods to go to school, and they bused black kids from the black part of the neighborhood into the white areas to go to school. And I was one of the ones that was bused into Pasadena High School, even though that school was 3 miles away. I was able to go there. And so there was a good mixture at all the schools. And I think because of that, all the schools had quality programs. And so I benefited from that. And just being around different types of people with different tastes and different views, that just opened up my mind to just being able to accept people for who they were and understanding how to move in and out of different situations. And I think that played a big part in me even becoming a teacher, you know. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to hear about some of those strategies that you used in a little bit. But before we get to that, can you explain a little bit about how your parents parented you as you were growing up?
Yeah. Well, I could tell, and I heard my mom tell stories, and sometimes they sound a little bit like horror stories when she talked about how she was disciplined. And my father, he grew up in a home where his father wasn't there, and he and his siblings were kind of left to themselves. And we kind of grew up in the time where it was okay for parents to kind of talk at their children rather than talk to. And so we got talked at a lot, and whippings were the norm, you know.
Mhm.
And we did have a healthy fear of authority because of that, but we didn't really learn how to choose the type of character we wanted to have, and we just kind of did what we were told, and so that kind of showed that kind of manifested itself as we became young adults. I think each and every one of us kind of went a little bit wild because we didn't really understand how to choose for ourselves. And so, but my dad had a paddle, and corporal punishment was the rule of the day. And I remember in school one time where corporal punishment was also allowed. We had this big principal. He was an ex-football player named Mr. Bird, And one time, me and a guy were out on the playground, kind of roughhousing. Actually, he was kind of like bullying, but the principal just saw us roughhousing, so he called us both into the office, and he decided he was going to give each of us a swat. So I took my swat, and I'm thinking to myself, "That's it, okay." And this was a big man, but when this guy who was like a bully went up to get his swat, it just his whole countenance changed. He began crying like a baby. And I was just amazed. And I was thinking, I can't believe that this guy was bullying me and he can't even have, it was just because I was used to that type of discipline where obviously he wasn't, you know. And so I just wanted to share that. But my mom, from my mom's side, she took us to church. Church was just something we did. Even when my father took us out and we stayed out late on Saturday night, maybe seeing a movie or going to the beach, we still got up early the next morning to go to church. Now, my father didn't go with us, but me and all my brothers and sisters went. And so that was just something that we could count on. Sunday school, Bible lessons every night. And that, like I said, that just really had a profound effect on, those scriptures being implanted in my mind and those Bible stories never left me. Even when I went out into the world and began to experiment and do my own thing, it was almost like I would, I would basically kind of dip my toe in and not just kind of dive in, like do a swan dive, because that word was always resonating with me. There was just no way of getting away from it. And so I thank my mom for that.
That's wonderful. How did your mom, with all of the Sunday school and the weekly Bible lessons and the church that you would go to during the weekend, how did that spill over into your parenting habits?
Well, yeah, it almost by default, I knew I was going to have to do something similar with my children. Now, I wasn't as good as she was as far as pulling them in and having nightly Bible lessons. I don't think any of my brothers and sisters were able to emulate that. But I did make sure that we were always going to church, even though sometimes I didn't really truly understand. I kind of was just kind of going through the motions, feeling like this is something I'm supposed to do, you know. And so giving my children a healthy fear of the Lord was really a key part of my parenting, you know. And yeah.
So,
Any other
so
questions?
I do. So let's talk a little bit. So I love that you said healthy fear of the Lord. So what else did you do with your kids? Because I know you talked about spending quality time was not something that you used to do, but what was some of the other habits that maybe you used in your parenting with your kiddos?
I remember saying something to this effect to their mom. I said, you deal with them now, and then I'll deal with them when they get older. And whenever now when I think that I actually said that, I kind of cringe on the inside. Like why couldn't I really just kind of get down next to them and really just engage with them as even as kids? And I think because I was so duty minded, I remember they'd be out in the front yard and I'd be either fixing the car, cutting the grass, building something, but it would be away from them. I would never really bring my sons in close and say, hey, watch me do this. And I wish that I had done that more, you know. And yeah.
So besides that, okay, so you're talking about how you wish you could have brought them in more, but your kids were fortunate in the simple fact that they had a parent on campus.
Oh yeah, yes. Both their mom and I were both teachers, you know, and in fact, I'm grateful to Miss Lewis, who I'm sure you know. She was the one that kind of took a chance on me because I didn't have a teaching credential when I got the job, but she took a chance on me because she felt like I could relate to the students and they could relate to me. And it was it wasn't 6 months later that she hired my ex-wife at that time, and so both their mom and me were teachers on campus that they went to, that they attended, and that was always the case. Even when they were in elementary school, their mom was on campus, and some of them even were in her class. And in middle school, they went to the same school that I taught at, and so I think that kind of helped them to be a little bit comfortable on the school campus. They knew they had a place. If things ever got out of control, they didn't have to wait until they got home to vent. They could just come to either one of our classes and, take a time out or do whatever they had to do. So school was almost like a home away from home for them, and I think that played to their benefit.
So I do think that there's been some benefit behind that as well. I know that you had mentioned, no, I didn't bring them in closer, but I think that you guys both, your ex-wife and you both had that special bond that a lot of parents don't get with kids that are at their job site with them. So I
Yeah,
think there was a lot to be said behind that as well.
yeah.
So I think that takes me to my next question for you is why did you become a teacher?
Hmm. That's good. That's a good question. You know, uh, I became a teacher as a result of pursuing a God-given purpose. My goal when I was young was just to get a steady job with benefits. And I worked a lot of odd end jobs. I worked at the animal care and control, and I was a bus boy at restaurants. And then I became a pharmacy technician, you know, and I was working for Los Angeles County as a pharmacy technician. And I made a decision to quit. But let me tell you what led up to that. In my early 20s, I had made my way out to a church way out on the outskirts of town, about 20 miles. It was on 198th and Avenue G, because I heard a man on the radio, and it was something about his voice where I felt like I need that. I need that in my life because I was still out there trying to figure out who I was, and I was lacking a mentor. And when I heard him speak, I was thinking, I need to. So I drove my car 20 miles to the outskirts of town to go to this small church. And but one day while I was sitting at this church, a prophet came through and he called me out by name. And even though there were two Michaels there, I knew that he was talking to me. And he called me up to the front. And he says, God is calling you to be a father to young men and boys. And that really kind of already confirmed some stuff that was going on inside of me because even as a young man, because my brothers, I have a brother that's about 4 years younger than me, and then I got another brother that's almost 10 years younger than me, and then two more brothers under that. So, and I remember I used to kind of take them with me with their friends. They would all pile in my car, and I'd take them to the movies and things like that to kind of keep them off the streets because they were kind of living in a rough part of town, and to keep them from just being in the streets, I would pile in my car and go take them to see movies. And so it was just like a natural thing that just came natural. And then when I joined this church, there were a couple of young men there that had a single mom. And so I would kind of hang out with them, do the same thing, go play dominoes with them, take them to the movies. And so it was like something that I was already doing. So just kind of, but then I had the privilege of being kind of sponsored to go to the Million Man March. My pastor was supposed to go, but he had a relative that passed, and so he gave the ticket to me and sent me. And while I was there, the speaker, who happened to be a Muslim, Farrakhan, said men need to have more of a hands-on in the community. And just sitting there and still the prophecy was always swirling around in my mind. um, I realized I needed to do something. And so when I came back home, it wasn't a month later that I decided to quit working for the county of LA. And I took a part-time gig in town as a teacher at a private school. And at that time, you didn't really need any credentials to to work at a private school. And because I was knowledgeable in the area of math, they really needed a math person to come in. And so that was the beginning of my teaching career. You know,
You really took on the mentoring. It's like you went straight from being the mentee in high school from
Hmm.
your band peers, and then you took on the role of the big brother as well as the mentor. And it seems like you're still working that out. You're still using that many, many years later through your teaching abilities and then now through Community Father and the Village Project.
Yes, yes.
So with that, what what were some of your teaching habits and strategies?
Okay. You know, my brief experience as a teacher in the private sector had shown me that that middle school age kids kind of took to me because of my personality, and I learned that as as long as I was showing them respect, then I was more than likely to get respect back. And so that was my approach. But I do got to give credit to my two teen teachers at New Vista, you know, Mr. Williamson and Miss Rainier at the time, who took me under my wings. And I think the one valuable lesson they taught me was you can't be their friends. Because, yeah, I think I would have fell into that trap of buying lunch and things like that for the kids had they not insisted that I not do those type of things. And so that kind of helped me to set those boundaries early, you know. And but but yet I still wanted to be that guy that was approachable. I didn't even the shy kids. I wanted them to be comfortable at talking to me. And so one of the things that I did is that I made an effort to kind of meet them where they were, you know. And sometimes that meant that I had to kind of get very low because especially when you think about kids who come from homes that are really dysfunctional or there's no value given to education at all. What do you do how do you meet that kid where they are? And I just remember, just allowing them to express freely the things that was going on with them, even if it had nothing to do with school, and I do think that that played a big part. I will say this, and I'm kind of admitting that my teaching style was very unorthodox. It was unorthodox.
Can you want to expand on that?
Well, let me just say this: I'm grateful that I had, like with Miss Lewis and other administrators, that they just weren't walking into my class all the time, because I there were times where the kids were always, especially in my culture, African American culture, kids were always like playing the dozens and saying things about either your mom or whatever. And and sometimes I would kind of engage, even in during class, you know. But I always made sure it wasn't malicious or inappropriate. But the fact that I did it during class, a lot of people would probably look down on that, like, and you call yourself a teacher. But one thing, and I didn't put this in my notes, Nicole, but one thing I will say is this. One day I looked at my results later on when they start giving us the results of how we were
Yes.
doing as a teacher. I wanted to know how I was doing, and this is what I noticed. Now, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I noticed that across the board, whether it was low kid or high kid, all my students went up a little bit. And so I felt like that I have that I'm gonna just put that down as a win. They
Yes.
all went up a little bit. I didn't have kids that went down, and I didn't have kids that shot way up. They just all went up a little bit. And I know that the smarter kids probably could have done a whole lot better, but because we were not leaving anyone behind, it kind of we kind of just rose as a team, you know what I mean, as a group. So
I think that goes back to your high school days where everybody, you stopped, you paused, everybody was on the same page. You were able to take everybody in your, whether it was your track, yellow track, or what have you, and you guys just rose together.
yeah,
And you built a community, and you built a community within your classroom, which allowed for the students to feel comfortable, to feel confident, to have that safe space, and to all move in a positive direction.
Yeah, yeah,
So even though you say it's not orthodox, and you're thankful that your administration wasn't constantly walking in, or people might be saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" I think given the times, I think that that was positive, and it was a positive way for you. You might have been ahead of your time, but
yeah,
looking back, that's a great way to just incorporate kids and make sure that they have a safe space to express themselves and to learn. Because once they know that you care, then they're going to leaps and bounds. They're going to grow.
yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share with your teaching habits or strategies?
Let's see. Oh, well, I and I didn't realize I was doing this until later on, but I realized that I was taking every opportunity to learn from my kids just as much as they were learning from me. In fact, sometimes I was learning more from them, you know, because they are people, and they all have things that they're going through and they're trying to navigate. And as you're trying to guide them, you learn things. And I learned so much, you know. And so, what makes me feel really good is whenever I see my students out and about, there's always a smile. And that kind of lets me know right off the bat that when they think about me and who I was to them, it brings a smile to their face. And so, who can ask for more than that?
Exactly. That's a win.
Yes.
So as we round out our time together, do you have any, like, what do you suggest to parents of students who are struggling in school?
Well, some of the things that have been said in past conversations and videos is, things like establishing a routine. And I'm really starting to see that value for myself. But I think for parents, they need to understand that you really can't expect your children to do something that you're not doing. And so I would suggest to parents, first, you establish a positive routine for yourself, and you establish good habits for yourself, whether it's, reading every night, studying every night. Just establish good habits that your kids can emulate, even if it means turning off the electronics and eating at the dining room table, just anything that you see as a positive, make that a habit in your life first, and then watch how it affects your children in that way. I would also say have a solution oriented mindset. We talked about that early on. And I think that when you have that mindset of always looking at things from the possibilities of it working rather than the negativities of what's wrong, I think that kind of tends to have a better results when you're raising your children. Look at the possibilities of who they can become and help them get there. And make it an opportunity to continually learn right alongside them, you know, and here's one, build a partnership with the teacher early on. This is what I would suggest for all parents that struggle, that children are struggling in school. You as a parent, you build that partnership with the teacher. If the teacher is not making an effort to reach out to you, then you make the first move. But you want to be in the partnership with that teacher. So establish that. Teachers, I don't know of too many teachers that would kind of decline that. Teachers are looking for that partnership with parents.
Yes.
A lot of times they feel like they have to do all the work and chasing parents. So I'm going to say to parents, you make the first move and you establish that partnership, and then you'll notice the change in your student, because when the student knows that you and the teachers are on the same page, they know to walk lightly.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Something that's really important to me is this last point I want to make. Whether mom and dad are together, always involve the other party in the child's school processes. And I want to focus mainly on the fathers, because a lot of times, most of the time, we see as teachers, the mothers will show up. And then even when both parents are there, sometimes the mother will do all the talking. And I'm not saying that the fathers need to speak up more, but at least be there. Send a message to your child that education is important to you as well. Because a lot of times, especially boys, they start to categorize things and they start looking at things as, oh, that's valuable to mom. And if it's just valuable to mom, then when they get older and they become a man, they don't see the value in it because it was never valuable to dad. And so I just want, um, I would like for men to just take more of an active role, and moms help them to take more of an active role. You know, and I know sometimes in families there's frictions in those relationships, but put all of that aside for the sake of your child doing better in education and involve the father. He needs to be there. Okay?
Yes, and I want to continue to encourage those dads that have stepped up. I've seen a lot more father figures coming through on open house, welcome back barbecues,
Uh-huh.
back to school nights. And so I really, as a teacher, I love to see that those fathers are stepping up and they are just present and they're there and they're speaking, they're using their time to be there to speak volumes to their kids, even though they may not be saying anything, just being present.
Okay.
So, well, thank you so much. And I just want to remind everybody that this show exists to empower the parents of struggling students, those that are facing challenges in academics, behaviors, or attendance. And we want to make sure that we offer mentorship, encouragement, and real life strategies that might create a breakthrough in your homes. So, thank you so much. Thank you again, Mr. Hodges.
Yes, I do want to remind people to come and visit the Village Project group page because we're not just offering solutions for parents who are struggling with their students. We're offering all types of solutions. We're offering teaching tips. We're offering advice for physical fitness and nutrition. There's even cleaning advice and just other resources that are valuable to families within the Antelope Valley. Because
Oh,
the goal is the village project is about it takes a village to build the village that we all want to call home. Yes.
yes, yes. And that can be found on on Facebook.
Yes, I will actually put the link as part of this video.
Perfect. And there's also homeschool stuff on there too, for those of you that are thinking maybe it's just for students or parents or families that go to public school. No, there's also homeschool stuff on there as well.
Yes. Yes, I'm learning so much from those different contributions, and I just appreciate it. Yes.
Yes. Well,
All right.
thank you.
So, all right. So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.